Hello, my name is Andrew, and this is officially the last week that you can use Fultz 25 for 25% off Vivobarefoot. So I just figured I'd give you guys a rundown, as I know they have a lot of different ones and it can be confusing. So yeah, let's do it. All right, so starting off, we've got the Primus Trail Flow Mid 2, and there's not a whole lot of difference between this and the one, which is actually still for sale on Vivo's site. But I think the one thing that they've really changed is they've added some more reinforcement here where the laces were. But anyways, this is a lightweight trail shoe for fast hiking and trail running. It's got a slip-on collar, which is really nice for fast on off, and some really excellent water resistance. It's got some protection too, but it's lighter than some of Vivo's heavier shoes like the Tracker Escape. You can see the sole here. It's about 5.3 millimeters, which is right in the middle for barefoot trail shoes. Then you got the Vivobarefoot Primus Light. This has been one of their most popular styles. It's one of the first barefoot shoes I ever got. It's super lightweight, has some minimal reinforcement on the side, so it's a little bit more than just a running shoe, but there's also a lot of breathability up front with this mesh here. And then the tread is quite minimal, so it's mostly for roads, but it can handle a little bit of gravel. Then we've got the Gobi sneaker leather. This is my go-to for casual. It's a really comfortable shoe. It looks kind of like a classic soccer sneaker. The whole upper is leather, and the sole, actually they've upgraded to be 100% natural leather, which is cool. It's stitched as well for durability, and the sole wraps up really high on the sides, so you get a lot of water resistance too. And then it's all leather on the inside and some suede as well, so it's a good option if you like wearing barefoot shoes without socks because it's totally non-toxic. And then it has a lightweight sole, which is mostly for roads with a little bit of gravel. Then we've got the Modus Strength, and this is a cross-training shoe that's kind of similar to the Primus Light, but it's a lot more reinforced. It's good if you're like climbing rope ladders, you need a lot of wear resistance on the side, or you're doing some serious side-to-side cross-training. The upper is a little bit more closed off than the Primus Light, so it's got some all-season versatility to it. But then on the collar, it's like stretchy, so you can slip into it if you tie it a little bit looser, or you can tie it snugger if you really need a lot of security. But the sole is 5 millimeters, so it's a little bit thicker than the Primus Light. I would say it's not as versatile for running, but it's better for strength training because it gives you more protection, and especially if you're going on a lot of gravel and stuff like that that can chew up a thinner sole, it's a good option. For hiking, the Tracker Leather AT is my all-time favorite boot, and the upgrade that they did from version 1 is really excellent. So they used to have this like thick rubber band here, but they've replaced it with leather. The whole thing is leather on the top, which you can waterproof with beeswax. It's got a stitched sole. Again, lots of wrap up on the side, so it's good for both dry and wet terrain. The inside is all leather too, so no synthetic stuff going on in there. And then the AT sole is so versatile. It's like the best balance of having enough coverage to protect you from sharp rocks, but then also enough space in between the lugs that you get some really good grip on wet terrain too. Next we've got the Modus Flex Natural. This is kind of like a lighter weight version of the Modus Strength. It doesn't have quite as much reinforcement on the side, so it's better if you need something that's kind of in between the Strength and the Primus Light, where it has some reinforcement but it doesn't feel as clunky. You know, the upper is more stretchy and open for yoga or whatever kind of movement stuff you want to do. It's also slip-on, which is really convenient, and the Natural is made with, I think, 2/3 Tencel, and it does have some synthetic in there, but it's better than the original in terms of breathability. And then it's got the same sole on the bottom, that 5 millimeter sole, which is tougher than the Primus Light. The Tracker Aura sandal is really awesome for doing water stuff like creek wading. And it's better than some of Vivo's closed styles because it drains really well. They've also folded in the edges of the strap so nothing rubs there. This is my favorite water shoe of all time. I mean, technically it's a sandal, but because of the high wrap around sole, you also get a little bit of protection from water if you don't want to get your feet wet right away if you're walking through mud or something and it's a little bit chilly. But yeah, some good adjustment here so you can get it really snug down for going on longer hikes. I find it works better for that than more minimal like Huarache sandals, and it's got the same AT sole as the full boot, so you can really do some long, tough hikes in this thing. For road running, the Primus Light Knit Natural is my favorite, and it's kind of like the Primus Light except a little bit more versatile for all-season use, and it uses natural materials. It's got a Tencel upper and a Tencel lining as well, so it's really soft and comfortable, and you can use it without socks if you want to. In terms of breathability, it's got perforation here, so it's kind of like in between. It's not completely closed off, but it isn't as breathable as the Primus Light's mesh. And then for the sole, it's basically the same thing. It's got a 4mm sole, which is made for roads and a little bit of light gravel. So now we've come to the Ultra. This is actually the only Vivo shoe I've ever tried that I don't really like. And it's actually excellent for being in water, like doing creek wading, because you've got this kind of Swiss cheese design that I've never seen any other shoe do. It's really cool. And it does drain super well, and it's very protective. It's got kind of the same sole as some of Vivo's 5mm models, like the Modus Flex. But the problem with this shoe is that when you get onto dry land, like this upper material is hard and it rubs really bad on your feet. So the only time that I would really use this is if you're only staying in water and you're not really going on dry land at all. This is the Primus Flow Knit. This is essentially just a knit version of the Primus Flow. The Flow is kind of like a speed shoe. It's good for racing. It's good for super fast track workouts and tempo runs. It's just feather light. You've got a little tiny bit of minimal toe protection in the front, but mostly this is just a speed shoe. And the sole is even lighter than the Primus Light. You've got kind of like a half and half racing setup here, where the outside is a little bit more durable, and then, or rather the inside where your foot is coming down and creating most of the traction, and the outside is more flexible and lighter and a little bit cushiony. So it's definitely awesome for sprinting, but not as durable long-term as the Primus Light. So this is more like a speed shoe that you use once in a while versus like a workhorse for just every day. The Primus Trail Knit FG is sort of like a little bit more durable version of the Primus Trail Flow. It's a little more oriented towards like mid to harder hikes versus super fast trail runs where you just want all agility. There's more reinforcement here. The sole is a little bit thicker, but it doesn't have as much water resistance, so this one isn't so good if it's super wet and muddy and all that stuff is just splashing up onto the knit upper. But it is slip-on, which is really convenient, like the mid, and you've got some lightweight laces there. In terms of the sole, it's 5.5mm, so just slightly thicker than the Trail Flow. And the FG has been a good tread for a long time. It's just a versatile do-everything tread. But I would actually say the Primus Trail Flow is a little bit more aggressive for wet terrain. Then you've got the lower Primus Trail Flow. This is essentially just a lower cut version of the mid. It's not as water resistant, so it's more oriented towards hotter, faster runs where you just want a ton of breathability. And it does dry fairly quick because of that. The upper is thinner, but you don't have as much protection. Although it does have the same sole. And like I said, this tread pattern is pretty good. It's really aggressive for how not deep it is. You get a lot of good ground feel without feeling clunky. Now we have the Vivobarefoot grounding Sensus. It's kind of the same thing as the original Sensus. This is like Vivobarefoot's lightest casual shoe. It's got a leather upper. It's super soft feeling. It's like wearing a baseball glove. This is the cracked leather version, which is kind of cool. I have these. But it has a decent amount of water resistance, but the sole doesn't wrap up as high, so if you're stepping through puddles, that can be a problem. So it's more of a dry weather shoe or maybe some light rain. The inside is very comfortable. It's the most comfortable barefoot shoe I've ever worn, and you can wear them without socks because it's just all natural suede and leather. And then for the sole, this is the thinnest Vivobarefoot has. It's 3mm, so it's like the Primus Light and the Gobi sneaker, but even thinner. But it does have a stitch sole for durability, which is awesome. The Sensus Mock lace-up leather is really similar, but it's more business oriented, like kind of business casual. And the upper doesn't have quite as much flex as the more suede-y Sensus. It's a little bit more polished, a little more dressy feeling, and also a little bit more water resistant with the polish and the slightly higher wraparound sole. Although it is slightly less flexible than the Sensus because of that, because the sole wraps up a bit higher. The Modus Flex tabby is essentially the same thing as the regular Modus Flex, except you've got this extra cut here in the toes, so it's kind of like a Japanese tabby shoe. It just gives it more of like almost a toe shoe feel if you want a little bit of extra agility up front. The Ra is really similar to the business casual Sensus. It just has kind of like an Oxford style, but also has a leather upper. It's just not quite as sheen. It's a little bit more matte looking, which I kind of like. I don't like super shiny shoes, but it has a slightly thicker sole than the Sensus. It's around 4 millimeters. Then we've got the Tracker Leather AT Low. This is essentially the same thing as the Tracker High, but in a low cut. I actually like the high cut boots a little bit better because this area here, I think it's just cut a bit too high and it can put a tiny bit of pressure on your ankles, but like the higher cut boot, they replaced the rubber rand with this leather one, so that made a huge difference. I didn't really like the first versions, but the second versions are a lot softer. And then you've got a really hardy leather upper, which is great for water resistance, wraparound sole to protect against mud and puddles, stitch sole, and then the same AT tread as the boots. The Primus Trail FG is pretty similar to the knit, but I actually like the knit better because the FG without the knit is a little bit more stiff feeling, like there's a little more reinforcement here and it's more kind of medium fitting in terms of the width, but it does have better breathability. So if you need something that's kind of like mid protection and you're in hot weather, it's a better option than the knit, but for all season use, the knit is more versatile. The Modus Studio sneaker leather is really comfortable. It's kind of like a more padded version of the Modus Flex. It's got a suede upper, which isn't as water resistant as full grain leather, but it does have a pretty high wraparound sole. It's got that same 5 millimeter tread that's useful for gravel and more intense friction type of cross training where a 3 or 4 millimeter sole isn't going to cut it. But the extra padding can make it a little bit hot in warmer weather, so it's better for cool to mid days. The Tracker Textile AT is essentially a vegan version of the Tracker Leather. I personally don't like it as much. I think it feels a little bit more stiff, and the synthetic tends to overheat, especially in warmer weather, versus the leather, which is a lot more breathable. But if you're looking for an only vegan version, then this is still a good option. It has the same sole as on the Tracker AT. The Magnaforce Escape is Vivo's really rugged boot. And it's interesting because it's got a slip-on collar, so it's like super convenient, but then it's got this really rugged 9.5 millimeter Michelin tread. It's kind of like Godzilla boots, but convenient. And the upper is very good for shedding water, essentially up to this point, which gives you some breathability with a wool blend collar. And it does have a stitch sole for durability, which is especially important with a boot that's heavier like this because there's more strain on it. But this sole is excellent if you're backpacking across really rugged terrain, and it's also very deep, so it gives you some nice grip on steep muddy hills. But because there's space between the lugs, it's actually more flexible than you would expect, although I do feel like it is overkill for more casual hikes. The Hydra Escape is a good option if you need something for super wet conditions, really muddy. You want something that can drain well, but you also want more protection than something like the Bloom, which is completely open. So the Hydra Escape is a good like triathlon shoe. It's slip-on, so you can get stones out really quickly. Has a good amount of protection without feeling clunky up top. And then the sole has the same pattern as the Magna Escape, except it's not quite as deep. It's only around 6 millimeters thick, so it's a little bit more agile and good for trail running. This is the Primus Trail All-Weather FG. This is essentially a closed-off version of the FG knit, and it's not completely waterproof, but if it's a really nasty, windy, cold day, it will help keep some of that out of the shoe. And it's got the same FG tread and does run a little bit more narrow like the regular FG. The Tracker Leather AT2 Low Suede is the same thing as the other lows, but it just has a little bit softer upper. It's better for warmer climates where it's a bit more dry, and because suede kind of breathes better than a full grain leather, but the one downside is that if it's super wet, suede can be harder to clean and it's not quite as water resistant because the water tends to kind of sit in these little fibers here. But I do like that the suede version is even softer and less noticeable on the ankle. The sandal I've never tried, and I kind of find it weird as a Vivo style because it's like really thick, you know? Like this is probably 3 times as thick as the Vivobarefoot Sensus Yin, which is the Birkenstock style, which I really love. So hopefully someday they'll just make a version that's a little more lightweight. We've also got the regular Primus Flow. This is the same thing as the knit version, but it's just more breathable for hot weather. These are probably Vivo's most breathable training shoes for road running when you're doing sprints and stuff at the track. And then we've got the Gobi Wavy Mule, probably Vivo's goofiest shoe name ever. It's kind of like an indoor slipper. It's mid-weather, so it can be warm in colder climates, but it's not quite as breathable in hot weather because it's got some insulation inside. It's a bit puffy. It's got a leather suede outside, which kind of looks like a freshly baked loaf of bread or a baguette or something, or a croissant. And then on the inside, it's like soft, puffy tencel. So it's not as warm as wool, which gives it a little bit more all-season versatility, but it's got a stitched sole, raised sides, so you actually can walk outside in them, and that give you some water resistance, a lot more than regular shoes. And then it's also lower in the back, so you can fold this strap up and then basically just slip them on, or put the strap max towards your heel, and then that gives you a little versatility for going on longer walks. But in terms of the sole, it's 3.7 millimeters, so it's the same thing as the Gobi sneaker. The Jungle Escape is sort of like a jungle version of Vivobarefoot's Escape boots. It's got really good breathability. I haven't been able to try it. I want to try it someday, but it's kind of like a mix of protection against the elements, but also being able to wick a lot of moisture and drain out of the boot, and has the same 9.5 millimeter Michelin tread as the Tracker Escape and the Magna Forest Escape. The Mim felt slipper is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a wool felt slipper, and then it has a Moxton style leather sole, which is nice if you want something grounding that feels super close to barefoot. All right, so that's an overview of the styles Vivobarefoot has in stock right now, but if you'd like to support the channel, you can shop with the referral links down below. Browse and filter more products with the shoe finder tool, my website barefootwear.org. Watch my zero drop transition video to learn more about barefooting. Finally, if you have a question about Vivobarefoot or about barefoot shoes in general, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.